I've been talking about shared access signatures a lot in this course. Now we're going to take a look at them and we're going to create a shared access signature with a policy, which I really think is the right pattern to use to provide access to secured objects in Azure.
In an earlier demonstration, I kind of faked the valet key pattern by hard coding in a URL and hard coding in a shared access signature. But now what I want to do is show you actually what is, I think, a much better way, certainly a more realistic way of doing it, because you would never hard code in a shared access signature's bad security policy to begin with, but also they do tend to expire. So what I'm going to do is a couple things. First of all, I'm going to dynamically pull back the URL using the storage SDK, but then I'm also using the same SDK. I'm going to make sure that I have a policy, because I want to have a policy to use for my shared access signature. And I want to create the shared access signature on a policy, not directly based on one of the shared keys, because remember, you only have 2 shared keys, and if I wanted to deactivate the SAS, I would have to change the key. And so just having a policy in between is generally speaking a much better architecture. Okay, so let's take a look at the right way to do this. And I've already got the code there, and I'll show you kind of where some of that comes from. Let me pull that out of there. All right, let's take a look at our code. So I've got a code, and there's a few different things. This is in my region. I love regions. All right, the first thing I do is I get a storage client, and the pattern here is going to be a pretty similar pattern for really any of your storage clients, whether it's your Cloud Blob client or your Cloud Table client, etc. So the first thing I do is I'm going to pull back a storage connection string, which I've got, and I can show you where I got that storage connection string from. Okay, if I go to my storage account, so this is in my current portal, I've got the storage account NCG demos, and if I go to access keys, little known feature here, for one of the keys, if I go over to the ellipses, I can actually view the connection string. Now this is something where I wouldn't want to have the actual connection string hard-coded into my app, because I would probably want to use storage, use development storage would be probably what would be in my web config file or app config file. And then if I push that up as a web app, then through the web app configuration, I'd put the right key in and I could manage it, or even better, I might do that through the key vault. But in any case, I can take and simply copy this connection string, which I've already done, and I could pop that into my web config file, which is around here somewhere. Good thing I pulled that up and had it prepared. Let's see, there we go. All right, so I've just literally taken that and put that into if I go down here under app settings, I've got a storage connection app setting, and I've just put in that connection string for my storage account. Okay, so in any case, that gets you there. So that gets me my client. So I get to a client, and then within the client, I make sure that it's got the images container, and if it doesn't have it, I create it. All right, then the next part is the fun part. This is the policy. So what I do is I get the permissions collection on line 48 from line 47, excuse me, from the container. And I want to see if a policy exists, and if it exists, I want to reference it. If it does not exist on lines 55 through 60, I'm going to create a policy. All right, and so it's going to have read permissions. It's going to be available for a day from the current time until the expiration. You may notice on lines 57 and 58, I'm using the datetime.utc now. That's because it is expecting a UTC date. That's how it kind of makes sure you don't have to worry about time zones. All right, and then I simply add it in with the name demo. And now the interesting thing is I return the permissions object back on line 47. All right, and you would think, okay, so all I have to do is update the permissions. Nope. Once I change that overall set of permissions, I have to write the entire set of permissions back to the container. And that's not a completely one-off type of pattern. It's a fairly common pattern that you'll see. You retrieve something, you update it, then you send the entire thing back to the server. Okay, so that's going to give me the policy. So first I get the account, the client, then I either get the policy or create the policy. All right, then I'm going to get my image, and you can see that I've got this var image equals container get blob reference. It gets Microsoft.png. All right, and that's from the container. So within the container, I get Microsoft PNG. Then I get a shared access signature for that blob based on that policy. Okay, and that's going to be a string. And so then I build the actual URL based on the image URI plus the SAS. So very simple process at that point. So really, once I have the image, once I have the SAS, that code's not tremendously different. I've factored it slightly differently, but it's not completely different than what I'd done just with that kind of very basic demonstration. All right, and then that gives us the actual valet key, which if I run this, and here's how it's used, all I do is I pull that back and I use it. I display the image URL that I just set, and I also put it into my HTML image tag. And at the end of the day, this guy comes up and runs. It's going to take a minute. Comes up and runs. There's my valet key. Everything should be good. I hope so. Giving this just a moment. And there we go. All right, so my image comes up. You can see the image there. And you can also see the actual URL, right? And so you can see the NCG demos, blob.core.windows.net /images/Microsoft.png, and then the actual SAS that was generated for it is what follows. And then again, you get to see the nice pretty image. So that's a pattern that I would recommend, and again, I think that fits very nicely with the concept of the valet key pattern, where I've got, in this case, it's simply an MVC web-based application that's using the storage SDK, the Azure Storage SDK, to get a client, to get a policy, to get an object. In this case, it's an image file, and to create a SAS on the image file using the policy.
Remember, the policy and the SAS are two separate things. They're created separately. They can be used separately, but you definitely want to consider architecturally how you can use these two together.